the road that carried everything. Before we begin, if you enjoy these late night sleep stories, please consider liking and subscribing. Now, just listen. The chain did not end at Northern Keep. It never did. What arrived there was only redistributed, divided, reshaped into smaller movements that no single person could see all at once. Crates were opened behind closed doors. Letters were read aloud and then burned. Orders were rewritten to sound like suggestions, and suggestions were delivered like commands. Adrian did not stay to witness any of it. Couriers were not meant to linger where answers lived. At dawn, he was giving a stamped pass, a heel of bread, and a direction. No questions were asked, no gratitude offered. The road south waited, pale beneath fresh snow, as if nothing had passed over it the day before. Adrian adjusted the straps of his pack and stepped into it. Winter made roads honest. Everything showed. Tracks lingered longer. Mistakes stayed visible. By mid-morning, he noticed he was not alone. Not followed. Accompanied. Another courier walked the road ahead of him. Far enough not to invite conversation, close enough to acknowledge existence. The man wore a similar coat, similar boots, no crate, only a satchel slung low and heavy. They did not greet one another. Chain rules discourage familiarity, but familiarity found ways to exist anyway. At the bend where the road curved toward the river, the man slowed, allowing Adrian to catch up. "You were north," the man said quietly. Adrian nodded. "You were west." The man's mouth tightened. "Still am." They walked together for a while, boots crunching in rhythm. "Did yours arrive sealed?" the man asked. "Yes." The man exhaled slowly. Then it mattered. They parted at the river crossing without another word. Winter hardened as the weeks passed. The chain adjusted. Routes shifted. Some roads closed without explanation. Others reopened under new names. Couriers learned to memorize changes rather than rely on maps. Maps were always behind reality. Adrian carried grain tallies, weapon counts, ledger corrections. Once, a small velvet box no larger than his palm, sealed so tightly he could not hear what rested inside. That delivery came with 2 escorts, not guards, observers. They walked several paces behind him at all times, speaking rarely, listening always. At night, they did not sleep fully. Adrian knew the signs. He had seen them before when men paid not to intervene unless necessary. He never asked why. The chain did not reward curiosity. In the towns, people felt it before they understood it. Bread grew scarcer. Prices shifted unevenly. One market overflowed while another stood bare. Wagons arrived late. Messages contradicted each other. Lords blamed weather. Priests blamed sin. Couriers blamed none of it. They walked. At inns, they shared fires with strangers who did not know what moved past them wrapped in oilcloth and sealed wax. Stories were told by the hearth of missing shipments, of soldiers appearing overnight, of roads that no longer led where they used to. Edrin listened. Listening was not forbidden, only repeating was. The night the chain nearly broke came without warning. Edrin had been reassigned again, this time to a southern route rarely used in winter. The road cut through open land, exposed to wind, watched only by distance. He carried a chest heavier than most, its weight pressing down through bone and muscle until every step required attention. By dusk, the sky had flattened into a single color. Snow began without ceremony. By nightfall, it erased all the road. Edrin pushed on. Stopping meant freezing. Freezing meant failure. The fire he found was not on the road. It was just off it. A small flame, sheltered by stone, tended carefully. Two figures sat nearby, faces hidden beneath hoods. No visible weapons, no raised hands. Warmth, one of them said calmly. Nothing more. Edrin stopped. He did not sit. "You're off the chain," he said. The second figure nodded. "That's why we see what the chain pretends not to." They did not ask for the crate. That was worse. "You carry redistribution," the first said. "You carry decisions already made." Edrin shifted the straps on his shoulders. "I carry weight." The figures exchanged a glance. "Then you know," the second said softly, "that the kingdom is being fed unevenly." Edrin said nothing. Snow thickened around them. "If this crate arrives," the first continued, "a border will close. A town will starve quietly. A lord will keep his seat." "And if it doesn't?" Edrin asked. The man smiled faintly. "Then the chain stumbles. Just once." Silence stretched. Edrin thought of the northern keep, of the voices behind stone walls, of the way guards had checked seals twice that night. "I walk," he said. "That's all we ask," the man replied. "That you remember you chose to." They stepped aside. The fire burned alone. The crate arrived 2 days late. No one mentioned it. But consequences unfolded anyway. A shipment rerouted. A garrison delayed. A border left unsealed for 1 more week. 1 more convoy passed through before the gate closed. People never noticed the gap. They noticed what filled it. When spring came slowly, as it always did, the chain loosened just enough to breathe. Couriers returned to familiar routes. Tokens were checked less often. Fires burned for comfort rather than survival. Adrian walked on. He was older now, slower, but still steady. He would never know exactly what he carried, but he knew this: the kingdom did not move by decree alone. It moved by footsteps, by roads walked in silence, by crates delivered without question, and by men who chose, sometimes, to arrive late. The spring did not fix what winter had revealed. It softened roads, yes. It reopened passes and melted the last hard edges of snow. But the chain had already learned something about itself. And once knowledge entered it, it did not leave easily. Adrian noticed the change before anyone named it. Assignments arrived with less explanation than before. Seals varied, some fresh, some old. Some impressed with marks he had never seen. Tokens were still checked, but not always by the same hands. Where once there had been consistency, there was now variation. And variation, in systems like the chain, was a sign of stress. He was sent east again, not to the ports, not to the capital, to the places between. There were the routes no one mentioned at court, narrow roads that curved around forgotten villages, old watchtowers no longer staffed, river crossings repaired just often enough to remain useful. The chain flowed through these places quietly, using them when it did not want to be seen. Adrian carried letters now more than crates. Thin packages, lightweight, heavy consequence. One letter bore no seal at all, only a knot tied in a style he recognized. It was not royal. It was older than that. Older than the crown itself. He did not open it. He walked. In the village of Greyford, the innkeeper did not ask where Adrian came from. He never did. The hearth burned low, the air warm with the smell of damp wood and boiled grain. Travelers sat scattered, not crowded, not distant. Spring made people cautious. It was a season that pretended danger had passed when it had only changed shape. Adrian took a seat near the fire. The innkeeper set bread and a cup before him without a word. As he turned away, his hand brushed the edge of the table twice. A signal. Adrian waited. Later, when the room had thinned and fire settled into a patient glow, the innkeeper returned. "You're late," he said quietly. "Yes," Adrian replied. "On purpose." The man nodded once. "Good. Others have been early lately. That worries people." "Who?" The innkeeper wiped his hands on his apron. "Those who remember how the chain used to move." Adrian looked into the fire. It never moved cleanly. No, the man agreed, but it moved predictably. Outside, rain began to fall. Soft, persistent. "There's talk," the innkeeper continued. "Not rebellion, not yet, but resistance." "To what?" The man leaned closer. "To delivery." Adrian finally looked up. When people don't know what's coming, the innkeeper said, they start imagining the worst. The next letter Adrian carried confirmed it. It was addressed to no one by name, only a place. A storage hall outside the city walls. Officially unused, unofficially indispensable. Goods passed through it without record. Letters were exchanged there without acknowledgement. Everyone in the chain knew it existed. No one admitted it. Adrian arrived at dusk. The doors were open. Inside, crates were stacked irregularly. Some marked, some stripped clean. Lanterns burned along the halls. Casting uneven light, 3 men waited. None wore insignia. "You're earlier than expected," one said. Adrian shook his head. "I'm on time." A pause. "That depends," another replied. "On who's counting?" Adrian handed over the letter. It was opened immediately. As the man read, his expression changed. Not to anger, not to fear, but calculation. He folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his coat. "This route is no longer safe," he said. "He will return by the Western Pass." "That adds 2 days." "Yes." Adrian adjusted his pack. "What changed?" The man hesitated. "Then, someone is tracking the chain." Adrian felt the weight of that saddle. "Who?" The man smiled thinly. "Someone who believes they are owed what they never carried." On the road back, Adrian noticed signs he had once ignored. Markers moved, tracks doubled. Fires burned where none should have been. At one crossing, he found the courier's token half buried in mud. He picked it up, turned it over. The mark was clean, too clean. Someone wanted it found. That night, he camped alone. Fire small and hidden. He ate slowly, listening. Spring insects chirped, careless of kingdoms. Somewhere distant, water moved freely again. Footsteps approached near dawn, not stealthy, intentional. Adrian did not reach for his knife. "You walk like a man who knows where weight belongs," a voice said. Adrian stayed seated. "And you walk like someone who wants to be heard." A figure emerged into firelight. Older, cloak worn thin at the edges. No weapon visible. "I walked the chain before you," the man said. "But it had a name." Adrian studied him. "Then you know why it exists?" "Yes," the man replied. "And why it's failing?" The fire cracked softly. "They're feeding the kingdom unevenly again," the man continued. "Too much to the edges, too little to the center. It looks generous. It isn't. Why, tell me?" The man smiled. "Because you arrived late on purpose." Silence stretched. "What do you want?" Adrian asked. The man leaned closer. "For one delivery to be refused." Adrian's breath fogged in the cold air. "That will break the chain." "No," the man said. "It will remind it that it has joints. Dawn crept in quietly. Edrin did not answer immediately. He stared into the fire until it burned down to embers. "I don't refuse deliveries," he said finally. The man nodded. "I know." He stood. "But you choose how long they take." Then he vanished back into the trees. Edrin resumed walking. The road stretched ahead, damp and uncertain. Somewhere along it, another crate waited. Another letter. Another decision already made by someone who would never carry it themselves. The chain moved, but it no longer moved unnoticed. And for the first time in many winters, Edrin wondered, not what he carried, but what would happen if he stopped.